The moon hung low over the Arizona territory, casting silver light across the endless stretch of desert and rock. September winds carried the scent of sage and distant rain, whispering through the canyons where Apache spirits were said to dwell. It was 1873, and the land between Mexico and the United States was a place of shifting borders and unspoken laws, where a man's word meant more than any treaty written in Washington or Mexico City. Thomas "Tom" Blackhawk crouched behind a cluster of mesquite, his dark eyes fixed on the hacienda below. He was 25 winters old, tall for an Apache, with the lean strength of one who had known both hunger and plenty. His people called him Taza, he who sees far. But tonight he saw only one thing: the slender figure moving through the courtyard garden, her white dress catching moonlight like a moth's wing. Margaret Maggie Delgado paused beside the fountain, her fingers trailing in the cool water. At 19, she possessed the kind of beauty that made men forget their promises and remember their dreams. Her father, Don Alejandro Delgado, owned more cattle than most men could count and more land than the eye could see from his hilltop ranch. But all his wealth couldn't buy what Maggie wanted most: the freedom to choose her own path. She sensed him before she saw him, that prickling awareness that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat these past 3 months. When Tom stepped from the shadows, moving with the fluid grace of his people, Maggie's breath caught not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, though her feet carried her toward him rather than away. "Father has doubled the guards. If they find you, let them find me." Tom's voice was low, rough as desert sand. He reached out, his calloused fingers barely grazing her cheek. "I had to see you." They met beneath the old cottonwood tree, its ancient branches spreading like protective arms above them. This had become their sanctuary, their small rebellion against a world that said an Apache warrior and a Mexican rancher's daughter were meant to be enemies, not lovers. "The Apache wars grow worse," Maggie said, pressing close to his warmth. "Father speaks of nothing but raids and retribution. He says your people have attacked settlements near Tucson." Tom's jaw tightened. "And the Bluecoats attack our camps, kill our women and children. They want us penned like cattle on their reservations, forgetting how to be Apache." He looked down at her, his fierce expression softening. "But I didn't come to speak of war." "Then why did you come?" Instead of answering with words, Tom reached into the leather pouch at his belt and withdrew something that glinted in the moonlight. It was a ring, carved from a single piece of turquoise, polished smooth by patient hands. "Among my people, when a man chooses a woman, he brings gifts to her family: horses, blankets, proof he can provide." His voice grew thick with emotion. "I have no horses to give your father, no blankets fine enough for his approval. But I have this carved by my own hands, blessed by our medicine man, and I have my word." Maggie's eyes filled with tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if the stone had been waiting all its life for this moment. "Tom, we both know my father will never." "I'm not asking for his permission." Tom's hands framed her face, his touch infinitely gentle despite the strength in them. "I'm asking for your promise. Wait for me, Maggie, no matter what comes, no matter how long it takes. Wait for me." "And you, what do you promise?" Tom drew her against him, feeling her heart beat against his chest like a captured bird. The night seemed to hold its breath around them, even the eternal desert wind falling still. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of mountains, the certainty of sunrise. "I promise that nothing will keep me from you. No wall they build, no soldiers they send. Not even death itself will stop me from coming back to claim your hand. This I swear by the spirits of my ancestors, by the earth beneath our feet and the stars above our heads. You are mine, Maggie Delgado, as I am yours, and no power in this world or the next can change that." The vow hung in the air between them, as real and solid as the ancient cottonwood. as enduring as the mountains that watched over the desert. Maggie rose on her toes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that tasted of promises and farewells, of love and defiance.
"I'll wait,"
she whispered against his mouth.
"Forever if I must."
A coyote howled in the distance, and Tom tensed. His people believed coyote calls could be omens, and this one spoke of change coming swift as a desert storm. Sure enough, the sound of horses reached them, many horses, moving fast from the direction of the Delgado ranch.
"The guards,"
Maggie gasped.
"They must have seen you cross the ridge."
Tom was already moving, checking his rifle, his knife. "Go back to the house. Tell them you heard something and came to investigate."
"Tom, no."
He caught her hands, pressing them briefly to his lips.
"Remember your promise, and remember mine,
no matter what you hear in the coming days. No matter what lies they tell you, know that I will return." The hoofbeats grew louder. Tom could distinguish at least 6 riders, maybe more. He had perhaps 2 minutes before they reached the garden.
"Go,"
he urged, pushing Maggie toward the house.
"Now."
She ran, her white dress flashing through the darkness like a spirit. Tom waited until she disappeared through the garden gate before melting back into the desert night. Behind him, he heard men shouting, saw torches flaring to life. Let them come. He knew these lands better than any white man or Mexican vaquero. They would not catch him tonight. But as he ran, swift and silent as his namesake hawk, Tom felt the weight of his vow settling into his bones. He had sworn by his ancestors, and such oaths were not given lightly among the Apache. Whatever came next, war, imprisonment, even death, he would find a way back to her. The moon watched his flight with an ancient, knowing eye. It had seen many lovers torn apart by the harsh realities of the frontier, seen promises broken on the wheel of circumstance. But perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps this love, forged in secret beneath its light, would prove stronger than the forces gathering against it. In her room, Maggie pressed her face to the window, watching the search party fan out across the desert. The turquoise ring felt warm on her finger, pulsing with a life of its own. She thought she could see him, just for a moment, a shadow among shadows, moving with the wind itself. Then he was gone, swallowed by the vast darkness of the territorial night. No wall, no soldier, not even death, she whispered, repeating his words like a prayer. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly beneath the stars, keeping its secrets, holding its breath for what was to come. The morning sun painted the Delgado hacienda in shades of gold and shadow. Maggie sat at her father's massive oak table, her hands folded in her lap to hide the turquoise ring she'd moved to a chain around her neck. Across from her, Don Alejandro Delgado studied his daughter with eyes that missed nothing. "The guards found tracks last night," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "Apache moccasins, near the old cottonwood." Maggie kept her expression neutral, a skill learned through years of living under her father's scrutiny. "There have been Apache in these lands since before we came. Father, one set of tracks hardly seems cause for concern." "One Apache is precisely cause for concern." Don Alejandro's fist struck the table, making the crystal glasses jump. "Especially when my daughter is found wandering the gardens at the same hour." Before Maggie could respond, the heavy doors swung open. A man entered, and the very air seemed to grow cold. Samuel Vargas stood 6 feet tall, his black suit impeccable despite the desert heat. At 35, he owned the largest freight company between San Antonio and Los Angeles, with government contracts that made him richer with each passing month. His pale eyes moved over Maggie with the calculating gaze of a man appraising livestock. "Don Alejandro," Vargas said, removing his hat with practiced courtesy. "Miss Margaret, I trust I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. Samuel, please, sit." Her father's demeanor changed entirely, warmth flooding his voice. "We were just discussing last night's disturbance." "Ah, yes, I heard. Vargas settled into a chair, his movements precise. My men report increased Apache activity all along the border. These savages grow bolder by the day. Perhaps it's time we took decisive action. Maggie's fingers found the hidden ring through the fabric of her dress. What kind of action, Mr. Vargas? His smile was thin as a blade. The kind that ensures the safety of civilized people. Miss Margaret. But let's speak of pleasanter things. Your father and I have been discussing your future. The words fell like stones into still water. Maggie looked between the two men, reading the satisfaction in her father's eyes, the possession in Vargas's. My future is my own to decide, she said quietly. No, mija, her father's voice hardened. Your future is what I say it is, and I say you will marry Mr. Vargas come Christmas. The arrangements have been made. The room spun. Maggie gripped the table's edge, forcing herself to remain seated when every instinct screamed at her to run. I won't do it. You will. Don Alejandro's face flushed dark. This foolishness ends now. You think I don't know about your midnight wanderings. You think I'm blind to the way you moon about like some lovesick fool, whatever girlish fantasies you've been harboring. Forget them. You are a Delgado. You will marry as befits your station. Vargas leaned forward, his pale eyes never leaving Maggie's face. I'm not an unreasonable man. Miss Margaret, as my wife, you'll want for nothing the finest clothes, a grand house in San Antonio, servants to attend your every need. All I ask in return is obedience. The word hung in the air like a threat. Maggie stood slowly, her chin raised. I would rather die an old maid than marry without love. Love, Vargas laughed, a sound like winter wind. Love is a luxury for peasants and fools. We are neither. He stood as well, moving closer. But perhaps in time you'll learn to appreciate what I offer. His hand reached for her face. Maggie stepped back, revulsion rising in her throat. Don't touch me. You should accustom yourself to my touch, Vargas said softly. Soon enough, it will be my right. Enough, Don Alejandro intervened, though his tone suggested approval rather than censure. Margaret, go to your room. Consider carefully what your stubbornness will cost you. Samuel, perhaps we should discuss the security arrangements for the wedding. Maggie fled, her mother's ghost seeming to whisper in the empty hallways. Elena Delgado had died when Maggie was 12, taking with her the only gentle presence in the hacienda. Since then, her father had grown harder, more focused on wealth and position. He saw his daughter not as a person, but as currency, to be spent for maximum advantage. Meanwhile, 50 miles north, Tom Blackhawk faced his own trial. The Apache camp was hidden in a box canyon, invisible from above, protected by centuries of knowledge. But no amount of concealment could hide the tension that crackled through the gathered warriors like lightning before a storm. You endanger us all. Grey Wolf, the eldest war chief, spoke from his place by the central fire. For a Mexican woman, the daughter of our enemy. Tom stood straight, meeting the accusing gazes of his people without flinching. Maggie Delgado is not our enemy. She has never raised a hand against the Apache. Her father's cattle graze on land stolen from us. Another warrior spat. His vaqueros shoot our hunters, report our movements to the blue coats, and you would bring this man's daughter among us. I would marry her, Tom said simply, as is my right as a warrior of this band. Grey Wolf's eyes narrowed. You forget yourself. Taza, you are Apache. She is white. She is Mexican, Tom corrected. And her heart is good. I have watched her tend injured animals, seen her kindness to the Mexican workers her father treats as slaves. She is not like him. All whites are alike. Grey Wolf declared, they hunger for our land, our death. This woman will bring soldiers to our camp. She will betray us as surely as the scorpion stings. Joseph Mangus, Tom's closest friend since boyhood, stepped forward. Grey Wolf speaks from pain, not wisdom. His son died at Camp Grant, but Taza has never let us false. If he says the woman can be trusted, the woman cannot be trusted because she will never come here. Grey Wolf interrupted. Her father will never permit it, and if Taza pursues this madness, he will bring destruction upon us all. The council continued long into the night, voices raised in anger and fear. Tom listened to it all, his face carved from stone. He understood their concerns. The Apache were being pressed from all sides, their traditional lands shrinking with each passing season. The reservation system sought to cage them, to turn warriors into farmers, to kill their spirit as surely as bullets killed their bodies. But understanding didn't change his heart. He had given his word to Maggie, sworn by his ancestors, among the Apache. Such oaths were sacred. To break his promise would be to lose his very soul. As dawn approached, Grey Wolf made his pronouncement. You may choose, Taza. Forget this woman and remain with your people, or pursue her and be cast out. No longer Apache, no longer under our protection. The ultimatum struck like a physical blow. To be cast out was worse than death. It meant becoming a ghost, belonging nowhere, protected by none. Tom looked around the circle, seeing friends who had ridden with him on raids, elders who had taught him the old ways, children he had helped bring into the world. I need time, he said finally. Give me until the next full moon to decide. Grey Wolf nodded grudgingly. 1 moon, no more. And if soldiers come seeking you, we will not shield you. You bring your own fate. As the council dispersed, Joseph caught Tom's arm. You're a fool, brother. No woman is worth losing your place among the people. Tom thought of Maggie's eyes in the moonlight, the way she had trembled when he slipped the ring onto her finger. You're wrong, Joseph. Some things are worth any price. Even your life, especially my life. Tom gazed toward the southern horizon, where somewhere beyond the desert and mountains, Maggie waited. A life without honor, without love, is no life at all. The whites understand this no better than you do. Joseph sighed, recognizing the futility of argument. Then I pray the spirits guide you, brother. You'll need all their help and more. As the sun rose over the canyon, painting the rocks in shades of blood and gold, Tom Blackhawk stood at the crossroads of his existence. Behind him lay the safety of his people, the only life he had ever known. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a love that demanded he risk everything. In the Delgado hacienda, Maggie watched the same sunrise through iron bars her father had installed on her window during the night. The message was clear: she was a prisoner until she agreed to marry Samuel Vargas. Her hand found the turquoise ring beneath her dress, its smooth surface a talisman against despair. 2 worlds, 2 prisons, 2 hearts that refused to surrender. The desert wind carried their unspoken prayers, weaving them together like invisible threads, binding them across the miles and the impossibilities that stood between them. The October heat hung heavy over the borderlands when the news came riding hard from the north. A patrol of cavalry had been ambushed near Skeleton Canyon. 7 soldiers dead. Their supply wagon burned. By noon, the story had grown. Apache raiders had struck 3 settlements, leaving destruction in their wake. By evening, in the saloons and trading posts, men spoke of nothing but revenge. Tom Blackhawk knew nothing of these attacks. He had spent the week hunting in the Dragoon Mountains, trying to clear his mind before the full moon brought Grey Wolf's ultimatum. But as he descended toward the valley, the smoke rising from too many fires told him something was terribly wrong. He found the Apache camp in chaos. Women were packing frantically while warriors painted their faces for war. Joseph met him at the canyon entrance, his expression grim. "Where have you been?" his friend demanded. "Everything has changed." What happened? White soldiers attacked a peaceful band near Sibicu, killed everyone: elders, women, children. The young warriors went mad with grief. They've been raiding for 3 days, and now the army is coming for all Apache, guilty or innocent. Tom's blood ran cold. "Our people..." Gray Wolf is moving the band deeper into Mexico, but there's more. Joseph's voice dropped. Someone has been speaking to the whites, telling them where to find our camps. 3 bands have been surprised in their sleep. The betrayer knows our ways, our hiding places. Who would do such a thing? Joseph glanced around, then leaned closer. Black Snake has disappeared. So have several others who oppose the raids. Gray Wolf believes they've turned scout for the army, trading Apache blood for white gold. Black Snake Tom knew him well. A warrior whose hatred for whites was matched only by his jealousy of those who gained more honor in battle. If he had turned traitor. There's something else. Joseph continued. The whites blame us for all the raids. Your woman's father has joined with that merchant Vargas. They're raising a private army, offering bounties for Apache scalps. Any Apache man, woman, child, $50 in gold. The world seemed to tilt. Tom gripped his rifle tighter. I must warn our people at Sweetwater Springs. They don't know. A shot cracked through the air. Joseph stumbled, surprise replacing concern on his face as blood bloomed across his chest. More shots followed, and suddenly the canyon erupted in screams and gunfire. Soldiers! Someone shouted. They found us! But these weren't regular cavalry. Tom recognized the mixed group of Americans, Mexicans, and Apache scouts that poured into the camp. At their head rode Samuel Vargas himself, his pale eyes scanning the chaos with satisfaction. Take the warriors alive if possible. Vargas commanded. The government pays more for live Apache to send to Florida. Kill anyone who resists. Tom half-carried Joseph to cover behind a cluster of boulders. His friend's breathing was shallow, blood frothing at his lips. Go! Joseph gasped. Warn the others. I won't leave you. You must. Joseph gripped Tom's arm with failing strength. Black Snake, he knows about your woman. Heard him talking to Vargas. They know everything. A chill deeper than winter seized Tom's heart. If Black Snake knew about Maggie, if he had told Vargas. Joseph's eyes were already glazing. Go, brother. Keep your promise. Tom had no time to mourn. The attack was coordinated, professional. These men had been guided by someone who knew exactly how the canyon's defenses worked. He fought his way through the melee, seeing faces he'd known all his life cut down by bullets and sabers. An elder woman fell clutching her grandchild. A young warrior who just earned his name died defending the horse herd. Near the canyon's rear exit, Tom found Gray Wolf making a final stand with a handful of warriors. The old chief's eyes met Tom's across the battlefield. Go, Gray Wolf roared. Someone must survive to tell our story, Hal. It was the hardest thing Tom had ever done. But he went behind him. The shooting gradually died away, replaced by the victorious shouts of the attackers and the weeping of captives. He ran through secret paths known only to Apache, but even these seemed unsafe now. How many had Black Snake revealed? How many of their sacred places were compromised? As night fell, Tom crouched in a cave high in the Chiricahuas, watching the valley burn below. He could see the long line of prisoners being herded north of his people, what remained of them, bound for the prison trains that would take them to Florida, to die in exile far from their ancestors' bones. At the Delgado Hacienda, Maggie heard the news from her maid Rosa, who whispered it through the locked door. They say Mr. Vargas is a hero, Señorita, that he destroyed a dangerous Apache camp, captured many raiders. Your father is very pleased. They celebrate tonight. Maggie pressed her face against the cool adobe wall, fighting nausea. She knew Tom's band, knew they raided only when provoked, that they wanted simply to be left alone. This wasn't justice, it was slaughter. Rosa, she called softly. Is there news of casualties? Many Apache dead? Señorita, Mr. Vargas brings proof of his victory. He says... Rosa's voice dropped further. He says he seeks one Apache especially, a warrior who corrupted a good Christian woman with pagan promises. He offers $100 gold for this one, alive. The turquoise ring burned against Maggie's skin. Vargas knew, somehow, he knew everything, as if summoned by her thoughts. She heard boots in the hallway, her door unlocked, and her father entered, Vargas close behind. Both men reeked of whiskey and gunpowder. Daughter. Don Alejandro's words slurred slightly. Mr. Vargas has news you should hear. Vargas stepped forward. Reaching into his coat, he withdrew something that caught the lamplight, a necklace of silver and turquoise. Unmistakably, Apache work. Maggie recognized it. She had seen it around the neck of Tom's sister. We found interesting things in that camp, Vargas said, watching her face. Things that suggest certain connections between the savages and civilized people. Connections that some might call treasonous. I don't know what you mean, Maggie said steadily. Don't you? Vargas moved closer. A certain Apache scout was very informative. Black Snake. He spoke of a warrior who met secretly with a Mexican woman. A woman who wore a ring of Apache making. Involuntarily, Maggie's hand moved toward her neck. Vargas smiled. I thought as much. You should know, Miss Margaret, that harboring enemies of the state is a hanging offense, even for women, even for the daughters of respected ranchers. You wouldn't dare. Don Alejandro growled, some protective instinct finally stirring despite his anger. Wouldn't I? Vargas turned to face the older man. Your daughter has been consorting with Apache raiders. How do you think that will appear to your fellow ranchers, to the government contracts you depend on she's ruined? Don Alejandro, unless... Unless what? Maggie asked, though she already knew. Unless she becomes my wife. A husband cannot testify against his wife, after all, and I would ensure that any evidence of her indiscretions disappears. The trap was perfectly sprung. Maggie looked at her father, seeing the calculation in his eyes, his daughter's life against her freedom. For Don Alejandro, it was no choice at all. The wedding will be next month, her father said heavily. You will cooperate, Margaret, you will smile, you will speak your vows, and you will be an obedient wife, or I will let Mr. Vargas do what he wishes with his evidence. Maggie stood straight, defeat and defiance warring in her heart. Tom Blackhawk will come for me. Vargas laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your savage lover. If he's not dead already, he soon will be. I've made sure of that. Every soldier, every bounty hunter, every Apache scout between here and Mexico is looking for him, and when they find him... He pulled out a wanted poster, freshly printed. Tom's face stared back at her, drawn from Black Snake's description. Below it, in bold letters, wanted dead or alive. Tom Taza Blackhawk, murderer and renegade. $100 gold reward. You see, Vargas folded the poster carefully. Even if he lives, he can never come near you again. Accept your fate, Margaret. You belong to me now. They left her alone with the darkness and the bitter taste of tears. Outside, she could hear the celebration continuing, men toasting their victory over enemies who had been caught sleeping. Women and children who had wanted only to live free. Maggie pulled out the turquoise ring, holding it up to catch the moonlight through her barred window. Somewhere out there, Tom was hunted, perhaps wounded, certainly grieving for his slaughtered people. But he was alive. She would have felt it if he weren't. Would have known in the very depths of her soul. No wall, no soldier, not even death, she whispered, repeating his vow like a prayer. The ring seemed to pulse with warmth, carrying her love across the miles to wherever he hid. I believe you, my love, I believe. In his mountain cave, Tom Blackhawk cleaned his rifle and prepared for war. Not the open warfare of his people, but the shadow war of the hunted. Black Snake's betrayal had cost him everything: his band, his friend, his place among the Apache. But it would not cost him his promise. The full moon rose over the desert, marking the time of Grey Wolf's ultimatum. But Grey Wolf was dead or captured, the band scattered to the winds, Tom was already outside his people's protection, already a ghost warrior walking between worlds. So be it. He would become what they forced him to become: a legend, a nightmare, a force that could not be killed or stopped. And he would return for Maggie, though all the armies of the earth stood between them. The blood of the innocent cried out from the canyon floor, demanding justice. But louder still in Tom's ears was the echo of his vow, sworn beneath the cottonwood tree, sealed with a kiss that tasted of forever. The war for love had begun. The Yuma Territorial Prison squatted like a stone toad on the bluff above the Colorado River, its walls baking under the November sun. They called it the hellhole, and for good reason. Temperatures soared above 100 degrees in summer, while winter nights brought a cold that seeped into a man's bones. For the Apache prisoners, torn from their mountain homes and desert freedoms, it was a living death. Tom Blackhawk had been there 3 weeks, though it felt like 3 years. The chains around his ankles had worn raw grooves in his flesh. The stone cell, barely 6 feet by 8, contained only a straw mattress and a bucket. But it was not the physical hardships that threatened to break him. It was the silence where once there had been desert wind, the walls where once there had been endless sky. They had caught him near Dragoon Springs, betrayed by an informant who knew he would return there to pray for his fallen brothers. It had taken 8 men to bring him down, and 3 of them would never ride again. Now he sat in darkness, counting the days by the meals of moldy bread and tepid water, keeping his sanity by carving in the soft sandstone wall. His fingers traced the letters again and again, Maggie. Below it, in Apache symbols, his vow, I will return. The guards thought him mad, scratching at the walls like an animal. They didn't understand that each mark was a prayer, each letter a promise renewed. Still writing love letters to your Mexican witch? Savage. Tom didn't look up as Guard Captain Jake Morrison entered. Morrison took particular pleasure in tormenting the Apache prisoners, especially those who could understand his taunts. Vargas sends his regards. Morrison continued, prodding Tom with his boot. Says the wedding's next week. Biggest celebration the territory's ever seen. Your woman will be wearing white, all pure and pretty for her new husband. Tom's hands stilled on the wall, but he kept his voice level. A caged wolf is still a wolf, and cages don't last forever. Morrison's laugh echoed in the narrow space. This one will, for you, anyway. Vargas paid good money to make sure you stay buried here. No trial, no transfer, no records. Far as the world knows, you died resisting arrest. After Morrison left, Tom returned to his carving, but now his fingers shaped new words, a message for anyone who might someday read them. Stone walls break, iron rusts, love endures. Meanwhile, 300 miles south, Maggie prepared for her wedding like a woman preparing for execution. The hacienda buzzed with activity servants hanging garlands, cooks preparing feasts, musicians practicing in the courtyard. Her wedding dress, imported from San Francisco, hung like a shroud in her room. You must eat something, señorita, Rosa pleaded, setting down another untouched tray. You grow thin as a shadow. Maggie stood at her window, no longer barred, now that her father believed her spirit broken. Have you heard any news? Rosa, from the prison. Rosa glanced nervously at the door. My cousin works in the Yuma Supply Depot. He says an Apache warrior arrived last month. Very dangerous. They keep him in solitary, in the dark. Maggie's heart leaped. Does he live? But barely. They say he carves on the walls, speaks to spirits. The guards fear him, even in chains. That night, Maggie made her decision. She had played the defeated daughter for weeks, lulling her father and Vargas into complacency. But she had also been planning, stealing small amounts of money, hiding supplies, studying maps by candlelight. She knew it was madness, a woman alone, traveling 300 miles through bandit country to a prison she could never enter. But madness was preferable to the living death that awaited her as Vargas's wife. She left at midnight, dressed in her brother's old clothes. He had died of fever years ago. But she had kept some of his things: a horse from the stables, saddlebags with food and water, her mother's silver to trade for help along the way, and always the turquoise ring on a cord around her neck. The next morning brought chaos to the Delgado hacienda. Don Alejandro raged like a wounded bull, while Vargas organized search parties with cold efficiency. Find her, he ordered his men. Bring her back unmarked if possible, but bring her back, and double the guard on that Apache savage, if she's fool enough to try reaching him. But Maggie had learned woodcraft from the vaqueros who had helped raise her after her mother's death. She avoided the main roads, traveling by night, hiding by day. When she had to interact with people, she spoke in the rough Spanish of a peasant boy, her face shadowed by a wide hat. 3 days into her journey, at a trading post near the Gila River, she encountered an unexpected ally. The old woman ran the post alone, her face weathered as ancient leather, her eyes sharp as flint. She took one look at Maggie and smiled. Running to or from, child? Both, Maggie admitted, too exhausted to lie. The woman who gave her name only as Mary offered food and a place to rest, over bitter coffee. She listened to Maggie's story without judgment. I had an Apache husband once, Mary said finally. Before the wars got bad, best man I ever knew. The cavalry killed him for the crime of being Apache on his own land. She studied Maggie with knowing eyes. Your man's in Yuma. Yes. Hard place to reach, harder to leave, but... Mary moved to an old trunk, pulling out a nun's habit. Sister Catherine passes through every month, bringing comfort to the prisoners. She's due tomorrow. Might be she could use a novice assistant. Hope flickered for the first time in weeks. Would she help? Catherine's got her own views on justice and mercy. Lost her brother in an Apache raid. But she ministers to Apache prisoners same as whites. Says God don't see color, just souls. Sister Catherine proved to be a small, fierce woman who looked at Maggie's desperate face and asked only one question. Do you love him true? With all my soul. Then put on that habit and keep your head down. I'll do the talking. The journey to Yuma took 2 days by wagon. Maggie kept her face hidden in the shadow of her hood, her hands folded in fake prayer that was actually real pleading to any power that might listen. The prison loomed before them like a medieval fortress, all stone and iron and hopelessness. Inside, the stench hit like a physical blow on washed bodies, waste, despair. Sister Catherine moved through it all with determined grace, distributing food, offering prayers, touching diseased hands without flinching. They moved deeper into the prison, past cells crammed with humanity, until they reached the solitary confinement wing. I must minister to the Apache prisoner, Sister Catherine told the guard. The one they call Black Hawk. The guard spat tobacco juice. Waste of time, sister. That one's more animal than man now. Don't even speak no more, just scratches at the walls. Nevertheless, they descended stone steps to a lower level, where the cells were carved from living rock. At the furthest cell, the guard held up his lantern. 5 minutes, sister, that's all. Maggie's breath caught. The figure chained to the wall bore little resemblance to the proud warrior she loved. Hair matted, body gaunt, clothes in rags. But when he lifted his head, his eyes were still Tom's eyes, deep, dark, unbroken. My son, Sister Catherine said gently, I bring food and prayer. Tom's gaze moved past her to the smaller figure behind. Something flickered in his expression, hope or hallucination. He couldn't tell. The smaller nun stepped forward, pushing back her hood just enough for him to see her face in the lantern light. Maggie. The word was barely a whisper, hoarse from disuse. She pressed against the bars, tears streaming. I'm here. I found you. You? How? No wall, she whispered urgently. No soldier. You promised. His chains clanked as he moved toward her, as far as the shackles allowed. Their fingers met through the bars, and for a moment the stone walls ceased to exist. There was only them. Only this impossible reunion that proved love stronger than any force that sought to divide them. "The guard returns," Sister Catherine warned. Maggie gripped Tom's fingers tighter. "I'll find a way. Don't give up. Promise me." "I promise." Life had returned to his voice, strength to his grip. "Wait for me." "Always." The guard's heavy steps echoed on the stairs. Maggie pulled her hood forward, becoming once again an anonymous nun. But as they left, she heard it Tom's voice, strong and clear, singing an Apache war song, not a song of death, but of triumph, of eagles rising from ashes, of warriors who could not be caged. Other Apache voices joined from distant cells, the ancient melody filling the stone corridors, making the guards reach nervously for their weapons. The hellhole had heard many sounds, screams, prayers, curses, weeping, but never this, never the sound of hope reborn, of spirits that refused to break. Outside the prison, Sister Catherine touched Maggie's shoulder. "What you did was dangerous. They could have recognized you." "He needed to know," Maggie said simply, "that he's not forgotten, that love survives." The nun studied her with wise eyes. "You've given him reason to live, but what of you Vargas will not stop searching." Maggie touched the turquoise ring beneath her habit. "Then I'll keep running. I'll find allies, raise money, petition judges. Somehow, some way, I'll free him. And if you can't—" Maggie thought of Tom's eyes, the way they had blazed back to life at the sight of her. "Then I'll wait at the prison gates until they release him or carry me away. I made a promise too, sister, and I keep my promises." As their wagon rolled away from Yuma, the setting sun painted the prison walls the color of blood. But from within those walls came the sound of singing Apache voices raised in defiance, proclaiming to the desert and sky that stone walls could hold their bodies but never their souls. The December rains had turned the prison yard to mud when the Apache boy appeared at the gates. He couldn't have been more than 12, thin as a reed, with eyes old beyond his years. The guards laughed when he said he'd come to visit his uncle, but Sister Catherine happened to be there delivering supplies. "I'll vouch for the child," she said quietly. "Let him see his kinsman." The boy gave his name as James Crow Feather, though Tom knew him as Little Fox Joseph's nephew, who should have been safe with the bands that fled to Mexico. As they sat across from each other in the visiting room, under the watch of bored guards, the boy spoke in English about missing his family, but his fingers moved against the table in the old sign language, telling a different story. Apache warriors gather in the Dragoon Mountains. They remember Taza. They wait. Tom's heart quickened, but he kept his face impassive. "Tell them to stay away. Too dangerous." "The Mexican woman sends this." Little Fox pulled out a small wooden cross, the kind many converts wore, but Tom felt the weight, wrong for simple wood. Inside, he knew, would be tools of file, perhaps a key impression. Maggie had found allies indeed. "She says the wedding was stopped. She hides with the sisters at San Xavier Mission. She says—" The boy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She says be ready for the new moon." 3 days later, the escape plan began to take shape. Sister Catherine had recruited more than just sympathizers. She had found professionals. Jake Morrison, the cruel guard captain, had gambling debts that the right people had purchased. For the promise of cleared debts and safe passage to California, he would look the other way at the crucial moment. But Vargas had spies everywhere. Word reached him that his prize had been visiting the prison, that Apache were gathering in the mountains, that Morrison had suddenly paid off his creditors. He rode for Yuma with 30 men, arriving the day before the new moon. "Double the guard," he ordered the warden. "Chain the Apache to the wall. No visitors, not even clergy." Tom felt the noose tightening. From his cell, he could hear the increased activity, sense the trap closing. But that night, as rain lashed the prison walls, He heard something else, a sound that shouldn't exist within stone and iron. An owl's call, perfectly mimicked. The Apache signal for "be ready." Near midnight, all hell broke loose. It started with a fire in the prison laundry, great billows of smoke that sent guards running with buckets. Then the horses in the prison stable began screaming, cut loose by unseen hands. In the confusion, nobody noticed the small figure in guards' clothing moving through the smoke toward the solitary cells. Little Fox had spent 3 days memorizing the prison layout, guided by a map drawn from Sister Catherine's many visits. He moved like his namesake, silent and sure. The keys he carried were Morrison's own, lost during the fire's chaos. Tom heard the key in the lock, saw the cell door swing open. For a moment, he couldn't move after 2 months in chains. Freedom seemed like another hallucination. Then, Little Fox was beside him, working on the shackles with tools that had indeed been hidden in the wooden cross. "Quickly, Uncle, the Mexican woman waits with horses." They moved through smoke and shadow, Tom's muscles screaming protest after weeks of confinement. But the warrior's discipline held pain was nothing. Freedom, everything. They reached the outer wall where ropes hung down, placed by Apache who had scaled the walls under cover of chaos. That's when Vargas appeared, pistol drawn, face twisted with rage. "I knew she'd try something. Stop right there, savage." Tom pushed Little Fox behind him. "Let the boy go. Your quarrel is with me." "My quarrel is with all Apache filth." Vargas cocked the hammer. "But you especially, you corrupted her, made her forget her place. For that alone." The knife flew from the shadows, striking Vargas's gun hand. He cursed, the weapon falling into the mud. From the darkness emerged 3 Apache warriors, faces painted for war. Tom recognized them survivors from his band who had refused to flee to Mexico, who had waited for this moment. "Go!" one shouted. "We hold them! You run!" Tom hesitated, unwilling to abandon his brothers again. But Little Fox tugged his arm. "The woman, Uncle, she risks all. Don't waste it." They rappelled down the outer wall as gunfire erupted behind them. In the desert beyond, Maggie waited with horses, dressed once again in men's clothing. When she saw Tom emerge from the darkness, she leaped from her mount, running to him heedless of everything else. Their embrace was brief shouts and gunshots grew closer. But in that moment, pressed against each other in the rain, the world contracted to just them, the gaunt prisoner and the woman who had defied everything to free him. "You came," he whispered into her hair. "You promised to return. I simply helped." She pulled back, studying his face. "Can you ride?" "To the ends of the earth." They mounted and fled into the storm, Little Fox leading the way. Behind them, Yuma prison blazed with torches as search parties organized. But the rain worked in their favor, washing away tracks, muffling sound. The Apache knew this land, knew where to hide, where to run. They rode through the night, changing horses at stations where sympathizers waited. Mary from the trading post had one ready. A Mexican farmer who hated Vargas provided another. Even a cavalry sergeant who had served with honorable Apache scouts looked the other way as they passed. By dawn, they had reached the foothills of the dragoons. Tom swayed in his saddle, exhaustion and months of privation finally taking their toll. But when Maggie reached out to steady him, he managed a smile. "Not yet, not until we're safe." The hidden canyon where the Apache waited seemed like paradise after Yuma's stones. 20 warriors, women, and children, all that remained of several bands, united now by shared loss and common purpose. They greeted Tom with quiet joy, the women immediately taking charge of his care. "You should not have risked this," Tom told Maggie as medicine women tended his wounds. "Vargas will never stop hunting us now. Then we'll face him together." She held up her left hand, where the turquoise ring once again circled her finger. "I'm done running from my choices, done letting others dictate my life." An elder woman approached, studying Maggie with sharp eyes. You are the one who freed our warrior.
I had help. Many people, Apache and Mexican and white, who believe love matters more than hate.
The woman nodded slowly. Then you are welcome here. But know this: to be with him is to be hunted always. No home, no peace, no safety. I understand. Can a Mexican rancher's daughter live as we live, hide as we hide, watch her children born in exile?
Maggie met the woman's gaze steadily. Tom's children will be my children. His people, my people. His fate, my fate. This I swear.
The oath hung in the air like a physical thing. The elder woman's stern expression softened slightly.
Then we shall see.
The desert tests all things, but you have proven your courage. That is a beginning. As the sun climbed higher, painting the canyon walls gold, Tom slept for the first time in months without chains. Maggie sat beside him, rifle across her lap, learning her first lesson as an Apache woman to guard what you love with your life. From the canyon rim, scouts watched for pursuit. It would come. Vargas was not a man to accept defeat. The territorial government would demand Tom's recapture. The army would mobilize. But for now, in this hidden place, love had triumphed over law, freedom over captivity. Little Fox sat with the other children, telling and retelling the story of the escape. With each telling, it grew. The fire became an inferno. The 3 warriors became 30. Tom's flight over the wall became an eagle's soaring. The stuff of legend was being born. And who could say where truth ended and myth began?
Will they catch us? A young girl asked.
Little Fox looked to where Tom and Maggie rested. 2 souls who had defied the world to be together. They will try. But my uncle has strong medicine now. He has love worth fighting for. And that little sister makes a warrior invincible. The wind carried his words across the desert, where somewhere Samuel Vargas nursed his wounded hand and wounded pride, planning vengeance. The chase would resume with the new day. Blood would flow again before this tale was done. But in the hidden canyon, for these few precious hours, there was peace, there was hope, there was the proof that sometimes, against all odds, love could break chains stronger than iron, scale walls higher than stone, and carve a small space of freedom in a world bent on keeping hearts apart. The legend began with whispers in the cantinas and trading posts. A ghostly Apache warrior who appeared from nowhere, struck like lightning, then vanished into the desert wind. Some said he could walk through walls. Others swore he commanded the spirits of fallen warriors. The Mexican peasants called him El Espiritu. The Americans feared him as the ghost warrior, but the Apache knew the truth. Tom Blackhawk had become something more than a man. He had become hope itself. 3 months had passed since the escape from Yuma. 3 months of running, hiding, fighting when cornered. The small band moved like shadows across the borderlands, never staying in one place more than a few days. Tom had recovered his strength, and more hardship had forged him into something harder than the iron that had once bound him. But it was the woman at his side who truly unsettled their enemies. Maggie had taken to the Apache life with a fierce determination that surprised even the elders. She learned to shoot with deadly accuracy, to read sign in the desert sand, to move silently as any warrior. When Mexican soldiers ambushed their camp near Skeleton Canyon, it was Maggie who spotted them first and raised the alarm.
She has the eyes of a hawk,
old Maria Morningstar told the other women, and the heart of a she-wolf protecting her mate. The transformation went deeper than skills. Maggie had shed her father's name like an outgrown skin. The Apache called her Nalta, she who chooses her path. When they performed the ceremony that made her Tom's wife in the eyes of the people, she wore traditional dress and spoke the ancient words without hesitation. That night, under stars that seemed to bless their union, she became fully what her heart had always known Tom's woman, now and forever. But their happiness cast long shadows. Don Alejandro had publicly disowned his daughter, calling her dead to the family. Vargas's hatred had grown into something close to madness.
The bounty on Tom's head reached $500, a fortune that drew every bounty hunter and glory seeker in the territory. "They come like vultures," Tom said one evening, watching dust clouds on the horizon that meant another pursuit. "How many more must die for Vargas's pride?" "As many as it takes," Maggie replied, checking her rifle. "Until they learn we won't be separated." The moment that transformed Tom from fugitive to legend came during what history would remember as the Battle of Crow Ridge. Vargas had finally done what seemed impossible. He had united 3 separate forces against the small Apache band: cavalry from Fort Huachuca, Mexican rurales from across the border, and his own private army of gunmen. Over 200 men converging on 30 Apache warriors and their families. They were trapped in a box canyon, cliffs on 3 sides, enemies closing the 4th. Some of the women wept, knowing what capture meant. But Tom stood before them, and in that moment something changed. Those who were there swore the air itself grew different, charged like before a thunderstorm. "They think they have us," Tom said, his voice carrying to every ear. "They think their numbers make them strong, but they forget this is our land. These rocks know our names. These winds carry our ancestors' voices. Today, we remind them why the Apache have never been conquered." What followed defied military logic. Tom split his 20 warriors into 4 groups, each melting into terrain that seemed to offer no concealment. When the attack came, the Apache were everywhere and nowhere. Shots came from impossible angles. Warriors appeared on cliff tops that couldn't be climbed, vanished into solid rock. Maggie led the women and children through a hidden cleft in the canyon wall that Tom had discovered days earlier. But she didn't flee far. Instead, she positioned the best shots among the women on the ridge above, creating a crossfire that the attackers never expected. "Apache women don't shoot," a cavalryman cried as bullets whistled past his head. "This one does," Maggie answered, her shot knocking his head into the dust. The battle raged for 6 hours. When the smoke cleared, 17 attackers lay dead, dozens more wounded. The Apache had lost 2 warriors, brave men who sold their lives dearly. But the psychological victory was even greater. The combined forces retreated in disorder, each blaming the others for the debacle. That night, around the campfires, the story grew. Tom hadn't just led the defense, he had been seen in multiple places at once. He had caught bullets in his bare hands. He had summoned the spirits of Apache warriors to fight alongside the living. By the time the tale reached the settlements, Tom Blackhawk had become invincible, a force of nature that no army could defeat. "It's nonsense," Vargas raged when he heard the stories. "He's just a man. He bleeds like any other." But doubt crept into his voice. 3 times now he had been certain of victory, and 3 times Tom had escaped. Worse, support for the Apache was growing. Mexican peasants, remembering their own struggles against oppression, began leaving food and water at known Apache camping spots. Some cavalry officers, disgusted by the war against women and children, found reasons to patrol in the wrong directions. Even some white settlers, those who had lived peacefully near Apache bands before the current troubles, spoke against the manhunt. Sister Catherine, who had faced no consequences for her role in the escape, no one could prove anything against a nun, used her influence to spread a different narrative. In her telling, Tom and Maggie became symbols of love conquering prejudice, of human dignity surviving injustice. "They say miracles are rare in these modern times," she told her congregation at San Xavier. "But is it not miraculous when love proves stronger than hate, when 2 people from different worlds risk everything to be together? Perhaps God works through Apache warriors as surely as through saints." Little Fox, who had become Tom's most trusted scout, brought news that changed everything. "The government in Washington grows tired of Vargas's war. They say it costs too much, makes too much trouble with Mexico. There is talk of amnesty, of letting peaceful Apache return to reservation lands. Vargas will never allow it." Tom said, "Then maybe Vargas is the problem that needs solving," Maggie suggested quietly. The idea took root slowly. Instead of always running, always reacting, why not take the initiative? Not through violence that would only confirm their enemy's worst beliefs, but through something more powerful: truth. Tom began leaving messages at his raids, written in English, Spanish, and Apache. They told his story, not the myth, but the reality. A man who wanted only to live free with the woman he loved. A warrior who fought only when cornered. The messages challenged Vargas directly: end your private war, face me alone, man to man, and let this be finished. The messages spread like wildfire. Newspapers reprinted them. People debated in saloons and parlors. Was the Apache right? Was this persecution rather than justice? Vargas felt the tide turning. His supporters grew fewer, his financing harder to secure. Even Don Alejandro began to waver, especially when Maggie's messages reached him, loving letters that spoke of forgiveness, of grandchildren he would never know if the vendetta continued. In desperation, Vargas played his final card. He announced a great reward not just for Tom, but for Maggie as well. $1,000 for the Apache warrior, $500 for the traitorous woman who rode with him. It was an unprecedented sum, enough to bring every desperate man in the territory into the hunt. But it also crossed a line, placing a bounty on a white woman, even one living with Apache. Shocked decent people. Newspaper editorials condemned it. Army officers questioned its legality. Even some of Vargas's own men began to distance themselves. Tom made his decision on a cold February morning, as he watched Maggie teaching Apache children to read using charcoal on flat stones. She was 3 months pregnant, just beginning to show. Their child would be born into this hunted life unless something changed. Prepare the people to move deeper into Mexico, he told his warriors. Take them to the sacred mountains where the old bands hide. And you? Asked Robert Two Horses, his war chief. I go to end this one way or another. Maggie found him preparing his weapons, and knew immediately what he planned. I'm coming with you. No, the child. Our child needs a father, and you need someone to watch your back. She touched his face gently. We began this together. We'll end it together. Tom looked into her eyes, those green eyes that had first captured him by moonlight, now hardened by sun and wind and struggle, but still holding all the love in the world. He knew better than to argue. She was Apache now, in all but blood, and Apache women had always been their warriors' strength. Then we go, he said simply, and may the spirits ride with us. Word spread through the desert like flame through dry grass. The ghost warrior was coming, not skulking in shadows, not raiding from ambush, but riding openly toward destiny. The legend had taken flesh, and it was coming to collect what was owed. In his fortified ranch house, Samuel Vargas received the news with a mixture of triumph and unease. At last, the savage was coming to him, but something in the reports disturbed him, the calm certainty in Apache eyes, the way even hardened gunmen spoke of Tom Blackhawk with something approaching awe. Double the guards, he ordered. Triple them, and send word to every gun hand in the territory. The ghost warrior comes, and we'll be ready. But even as he gave orders, Vargas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert wind. For the first time since this hunt began, he wondered if he had pursued the wrong prey, if perhaps the hunter had always been the hunted, and only now was the truth becoming clear. The final confrontation approached like a desert storm, inevitable, terrible, and cleansing, and at its heart, two people who had sworn that nothing, not walls, not soldiers, not even death would keep them apart. The bells of San Antonio de Padua rang out across the valley, their bronze voices carrying news of the wedding that would unite two of the territory's most powerful families. Samuel Vargas was finally claiming his prize, not Maggie Delgado, who was dead to society, but Catherine Thornton, daughter of a railroad baron whose connections reached all the way to Washington. The marriage would make Vargas untouchable, his past crimes washed clean by new money and political influence. The church stood like a white jewel in the March sun.
decorated with imported flowers and silk ribbons. Guards were everywhere on rooftops, at every entrance, patrolling the plaza. Vargas was taking no chances. He knew Tom Blackhawk was coming, had been tracking the Apache's deliberate approach for days. This wedding was bait and fortress both. Inside the church, 300 guests gathered in their finest clothes. Don Alejandro sat in the front row, his face carved from stone. The loss of his daughter had aged him 10 years, but pride kept his back straight. If he wondered why Vargas had insisted on holding the wedding here, in this church so close to where everything had begun, he kept his questions to himself. The bride entered on her father's arm, veiled and silent. She was beautiful in the way of a porcelain doll, perfect, cold, and entirely without passion. Exactly what Vargas wanted now. No more wild Mexican girls with Apache lovers. This wife would know her place. Father Miguel stood at the altar, his hands trembling slightly as he held the prayer book. He had baptized Maggie Delgado in this very church, had watched her grow from child to woman. Now he must perform this mockery of a sacrament while her true love was hunted like an animal. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice echoing in the vaulted space, "we are gathered here today." The great doors crashed open, not with violence, but with the measured force of someone who had every right to enter. Tom Blackhawk stood silhouetted against the blazing day, and for a moment time itself seemed to stop. He was dressed not as the ragged fugitive of wanted posters, but as an Apache warrior in full ceremonial regalia, eagle feathers in his hair, silver and turquoise at his throat, the finest beaded shirt and leggings his people could make. He looked like what he was, a prince of the desert, come to claim his own. Beside him stood Maggie, and the gathered crowd gasped as one. She wore a white doe-skin dress, Apache-made but cut in a style that echoed Mexican tradition. Her hair fell loose past her shoulders, held back by a beaded headband. Her pregnancy showed clearly now, a declaration more powerful than any words. "I have come," Tom said, his voice carrying to every corner of the church, "to challenge the lies spoken in this place, to speak truth before God and man." Guns appeared in dozens of hands, but Tom raised his own hand, showing it empty. "I come in peace, seeking only justice. Will you murder an unarmed man in God's house? Is this the civilization you claim to defend?" Father Miguel found his courage. "Let him speak. This is sanctuary. No blood will be shed here." Vargas's face had gone the color of old ash. "Arrest them. They're fugitives." "Are we?" Maggie stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "I see my father here. Am I under arrest for loving my husband, for carrying his child?" She looked directly at Don Alejandro. "Father, will you have your grandson born in prison? Will you let pride destroy what little family remains to you?" The old man's facade cracked. Tears ran down his weathered cheeks as he saw his daughter truly for the first time in months, not the defiant girl who had fled his house, but a woman grown strong through trial, radiant with the life growing within her. "Enough!" Vargas drew his pistol. "You savage bastard! You've corrupted everything you touch, but it ends now." "Yes," Tom agreed calmly. "It ends, but not as you think." He reached into his shirt and withdrew a folded document. "This is a letter from General Miles, military commander of the Arizona Territory. In it, he grants full amnesty to me and my band, on condition we keep the peace. The war is over. Vargas, your private vendetta has no legal standing." "Lies." But Vargas's voice shook. His political connections had been warning him for weeks that Washington was tired of his personal war. "Additionally," Maggie added, producing her own papers, "these are sworn statements from 12 witnesses, Apache, Mexican, and white, testifying to the murders committed by your hired killers. The massacre at Crow Creek, the slaughter of women and children, your bounties paid for Apache scalps, regardless of guilt or innocence." The wedding guests stirred uneasily. These were not the romantic crimes of passion they could overlook. but atrocities that stained anyone associated with them. Tom stepped closer to the altar, ignoring the guns trained on him. "Samuel Vargas, I call you to account. You have hidden behind armies and laws while committing crimes that would shame any warrior. Face me now, man to man. Let us end this with honor." "Honor?" Vargas laughed wildly. "You speak of honor. You're nothing but a savage who should have hanged months ago." "Then prove it," Tom challenged. "If I am the savage and you the civilized man, face me fairly. Choose your weapon. Let God decide who speaks truth." The church erupted in shocked murmurs. A duel. Here and now, it was madness. It was also, by the ancient codes many still honored, perfectly legal. A challenge given in public could not be refused without devastating loss of face. Catherine Thornton, the forgotten bride, suddenly pulled off her veil. "I will not marry a coward," she announced. "Accept his challenge or release me from this engagement." Trapped by his own pride and the expectations of his peers, Vargas had no choice. "Pistols!" he snarled. "In the plaza, now." The wedding guests poured outside, forming a great circle in the dusty square. This was better than any ceremony. This was history being made, the stuff of legend unfolding before their eyes. Father Miguel tried one last time. "This is murder, not justice. I beg you both." "Father," Maggie interrupted gently, "sometimes peace can only come through confrontation. My husband offers honor to a man who deserves none. That is not murder. That is mercy." The weapons were produced matching Colt revolvers, checked and loaded by neutral parties. The two men stood back to back in the center of the plaza. The crowd hushed with terrible anticipation. 10 paces, the judge intoned. "Turn and fire on my signal." As they began to walk, Tom spoke quietly, his words carrying in the still air. "I take no pleasure in this. Vargas, even now, withdraw your vendetta. Let us all live in peace." "Never," Vargas hissed. "Not while you draw breath." "Then you have chosen." 10. They turned. Time slowed to honey. Vargas was fast, his gun coming up in a smooth arc. But Tom was something beyond fast. He moved with the fluid grace of one who had danced with death so often they were old partners. 2 shots cracked as one. Vargas's bullet whined past Tom's ear, close enough to clip an eagle feather. Tom's shot was perfect not through the heart, but through the gun hand, sending Vargas's weapon spinning into the dust. Vargas dropped to his knees, clutching his shattered hand, waiting for the killing shot. But Tom holstered his weapon and turned to the crowd. "It is finished. This man lives because I choose life over death, peace over vengeance. The Apache are not the savages here." He looked directly at the army officers present. "We accept the government's amnesty. We will keep the peace, farm the land we are given, raise our children as Americans. But we will also remain Apache. This is our only condition." An old colonel stepped forward. "I've seen many fights, but never mercy given so freely to one who deserved it so little. Your terms are acceptable. Mr. Blackhawk, welcome to the territory as free men." The crowd erupted, some in celebration, others in consternation, but the tide had turned decisively. Vargas was helped away, his power broken more thoroughly than any bullet could have managed. He would live, but as a reminder that hatred ultimately defeats itself. Don Alejandro approached slowly, like a man walking through a dream. He stopped before Maggie, his hand half raised as if to touch her face, then falling back. "Daughter," he whispered, "can you forgive a foolish old man?" Maggie embraced him, tears flowing freely. "There is nothing to forgive, Papa. We all did what we thought best. But now we can choose better." The old man turned to Tom, struggling with a lifetime of prejudice. "You saved his life when you could have taken it. That was not the act of a savage." "No, sir," Tom agreed quietly. "It was the act of a man who loves your daughter and wants his children to grow up in a world with less hate than the one we inherited." Don Alejandro extended his hand slowly. Tom took it,
And in that handshake, 100 years of enmity began to heal. Father Miguel, tears streaming down his face, raised his voice. "If the couple would approach the altar, I believe we have a wedding to perform. A proper one this time." The crowd laughed, tension breaking like a fever. Tom and Maggie stood before God and man, no longer fugitives but free people choosing their own destiny. The words were spoken in English, Spanish, and Apache. Rings were exchanged, his turquoise, her gold, and when Father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared held all the promise of the life they had fought so hard to claim. As they walked from the church, rice raining down from 100 hands, Maggie whispered, "You kept your promise. Nothing could stop you from coming back." "And you kept yours," Tom replied, his hand resting gently on her swollen belly. "You waited, through everything." "Not waited," she corrected, smiling up at him. "Fought. We both fought, and we won." The sun set over San Antonio de Padua, painting the sky in shades of hope. Tomorrow would bring challenges, building a new life, bridging two cultures, raising children who belonged fully to both worlds. But tonight, there was only joy. The ghost warrior had become simply Tom Blackhawk, husband and soon-to-be father. The Mexican girl who defied her world had become Nalta, she who chooses her path. And together, they had proven that love could indeed conquer all, not through magic or legend, but through the simple, unstoppable human refusal to accept a world that said their love was wrong. The bells rang out again, no longer announcing a false wedding but celebrating a true one. And somewhere in the desert, the spirits of warriors past smiled and were at peace. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and coming rain as Tom Blackhawk stood on the ridge overlooking their new home. 5 years had passed since the confrontation at the church. 5 years of building something from nothing but determination and love. Below him, the valley stretched green with crops corn growing tall, beans climbing poles, squash spreading their broad leaves in the ancient way of his people. Their ranch sat where two worlds met, and it showed in every detail. The main house combined Apache design with Mexican architecture, creating something entirely new. Children's laughter echoed from the courtyard, where Maggie taught letters and numbers to anyone who wished to learn Apache, Mexican, even some white settlers' children whose parents had overcome their prejudice. "Papa, Papa!" A small whirlwind of energy crashed into Tom's legs. 4-year-old Joseph, named for Tom's fallen friend, had his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. Behind him toddled 2-year-old Elena, already showing the fierce independence that marked all Blackhawk children. "Your mother is looking for you," Tom said, scooping both children into his arms. "Something about washing before the guests arrive." "Don't want to wash," Joseph declared. "Want to track rabbits with Uncle Fox." "After," Tom promised. "Today is important." Indeed it was. Today marked the official opening of the first integrated school in the territory, built on Blackhawk land with funds from an unlikely alliance, Don Alejandro's cattle money, Sister Catherine's church connections, and even a surprising donation from the railroad baron Thornton, whose daughter had married a decent man after all. As they walked back to the house, Tom reflected on the strange paths that had led them here. The government's reservation system had failed spectacularly, but from its ashes had risen something better. Small communities like theirs, where Apache could maintain their traditions while adapting to the changing world, where children could learn both the old songs and new skills, where being different was a strength, not a curse. Maggie met them at the door, radiant despite the flower in her hair. "There you are, Tom. Your sister just arrived with her family. Father's already here, arguing with Robert Two Horses about cattle prices, and," she paused, smiling, "we just received word. The territorial legislature approved our petition. The Apache will have voting rights, same as any citizen." Tom set the children down, pulling his wife close. "We did it." "We did it," she agreed, then laughed. "Now help me get these wild creatures clean before—" "Too late," a familiar voice called. Sister Catherine swept in. Older now, but still formidable. The governor's carriage was spotted on the main road. He'll be here within the hour. The next hour was controlled chaos. Children were washed and dressed. Food was prepared. Last-minute preparations made. By the time Governor Hughes arrived with his entourage, the ranch was ready to receive him. The ceremony was simple but profound. Standing before the assembled crowd, Apache warriors beside Mexican farmers, white settlers beside former slaves who had found refuge here, the governor spoke words that would have been impossible just years before. This school represents the future of our territory, a place where all children, regardless of birth, can learn and grow together, where the wisdom of ancient peoples meets the knowledge of the modern world. He turned to Tom and Maggie. You have shown us that our differences need not divide us, that love and respect can bridge any gap. As the ribbon was cut and the children rushed into their new classroom, Tom noticed a lone rider approaching. The man was older, graying. His right hand carried stiffly. Samuel Vargas dismounted slowly. His once proud bearing diminished but not broken. The crowd tensed. Tom stepped forward, ready for trouble. But Vargas raised his good hand in peace. I come seeking forgiveness, he said simply. These years have taught me the weight of hatred. I was wrong. The words hung in the desert air. Tom studied his former enemy, seeing the genuine pain in his eyes. Vargas had lost everything to his vendetta wealth, power, respect. But perhaps he had found something in that loss. The past is past, Tom said finally. What matters is what we build tomorrow. Vargas nodded, relief flickering across his face. I have little to offer, but I know numbers, accounts. If the school needs... Speak with Sister Catherine, Maggie interrupted, her voice carefully neutral. Redemption is her specialty. As Vargas was led away for what would become years of quiet service to the community, Tom and Maggie climbed back to their ridge. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and purple. Below them, lanterns were being lit for the evening celebration. Music drifted up Apache drums mixing with Mexican guitars, creating something beautiful and new. Do you ever regret it? Maggie asked. The life we might have had if we'd chosen easier paths. Tom pulled her close, feeling the solid warmth of her, the reality of all they'd built together. Never. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of fear, it all led us here. Here, she repeated, gesturing at the scene below. Where Apache children learn beside Mexican and white, where your nephew Little Fox is courting the minister's daughter, where my father plays with his grandchildren without caring that they're half Apache. Where love won, Tom added softly. A young couple approached the ridge James Crow Feather, Little Fox grown to manhood, and his beloved, a shy blonde girl who was learning Apache ways with the same determination Maggie had shown. They sought Tom's blessing for their marriage. Another bridge between worlds. The old ones say I'm too accepting, Tom told them after giving his blessing. That I've forgotten the warrior's way. Have you? Little Fox asked. Tom thought of all the battles fought and won not with bullets, but with patience, not with hatred, but with hope. No, I've learned that the greatest warriors are those who fight for peace, who protect not just their own, but all who need protection, who build instead of destroy. As full darkness fell, the celebration below grew louder. Don Alejandro's voice rose in an old Mexican ballad, joined by Apache harmonies. Children of all colors chased fireflies together. The school stood proud in the moonlight, a symbol of change that couldn't be stopped. Tell me the story, Papa, Joseph demanded, appearing at their side. About the promise. Tom smiled, settling his son on his lap. Once, under a cottonwood tree, a young Apache warrior made a promise to the woman he loved. As he told the tale already becoming legend, already being softened and shaped by time, more children gathered. Apache and Mexican, white and black, all listening with wide eyes to the story of love that refused to surrender. And the warrior kept his promise? A young girl asked. He did, Maggie answered, her hand finding Tom's. Though it took everything they had, though the whole world stood against them, they kept their promises to each other. And they lived happily ever after, Joseph prompted, knowing the answer. Tom looked out over their valley, their home, their mixed and beautiful family of blood and choice. He thought of the challenges still to come. Prejudice died hard, and there would always be those who feared change. But he also thought of the school below, the children who would grow up seeing difference as natural, love as stronger than law. They lived, he said finally, not without troubles, not without sorrows, but they lived free. They chose their own path, and in the end, that's the only happiness that matters, the freedom to choose who you love, how you live, what world you build for your children. The turquoise ring on Maggie's finger caught the moonlight, still bright after all these years. Somewhere in the desert, a coyote called not an omen now, just a wild thing singing to the stars. The wind carried the scent of rain, promising good harvest, promising growth, promising tomorrow. No wall, no soldier, not even death, Tom whispered, the old vow still strong. Could stop you from coming back to me, Maggie finished, their private ritual of remembrance. Below them, two worlds danced together in the desert night, proof that sometimes, against all odds, love doesn't just endure, it transforms everything it touches. The ghost warrior had become a builder of bridges. The defiant daughter had become a mother of nations, and their love, tested by fire and hatred and seemingly insurmountable divides, had become the foundation for something entirely new. In the end, that's what the old songs would remember, not just the escape from prison or the confrontation at the church, but this two people who refused to accept that different meant enemy, who proved that love could cross any border, break any chain, heal any wound. The desert stars watched over them all, Apache and Mexican, warrior and rancher, all made one family by choice and determination and the simple, revolutionary act of seeing each other as human. The legend was complete, but the life, the beautiful, complex, challenging life had only just begun. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to know where in the world you're enjoying this tale. Please share in the comments below where you're listening from so we can connect across the miles, just like Tom and Maggie connected across their divide. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about their incredible journey. Did their love story touch your heart? What part moved you most? Let me know in the comments.